much. After me is the party, so we'll definitely...
Yours on your pocket.
Hey,
Perfect.
technology, gotta love it. So huge thanks to the organisers for an amazing conference as always. And after me is the bar, so we'll try and get through this reasonably quickly for everyone. So I'm Raymond Schippers. I'm the director, the security engineering director, for detection and response at Canva. Before joining Canva about 3 years ago, I worked for a vendor doing IR and CTI consulting for nearly a decade. Also a bit of a photography and aviation geek. So, for those of you who don't know who Canva is, we're a visual communication platform founded here in Australia. HQ is still here in Australia in Sydney. And to give you an idea of the scale our team protects, we see over 200 new designs created on our platform every second of the day. We have over 135 million monthly active users and 3,500 staff. So today we'll be briefly talking about why am I talking about alert fatigue and burnout? Why is it important to me? What did we do differently at Canva? What are some of the lessons we've learned? And we'll obviously do some Q&A. So why talk about burnout? Well, mental health, burnout is something I'm incredibly passionate about. Throughout my time in the industry, I've seen an impact from many, many different engineers, both personally and colleagues and people we work with. Through my own experience, I know that organisational structure, process, procedure, and the culture within the organisation and team has a huge impact on reducing burnout and the impacts of the stress of our jobs on them. I'm incredibly fortunate that I'm in a position at a company where we get the full support to try something a bit different and to deal with these issues. So what is burnout? Well, burnout is actually identified by the World Health Organization as a syndrome that it's listed on their international categorization of diseases that is recognized as unmanaged chronic workplace stress. Probably sounds familiar. And so it leads to feelings of exhaustion, negativism, and other symptoms, which I'm sure we've all seen in the workplace. And they say on their website it reduces professional efficacy. But for me personally, I've seen the huge impact it has, not just on people's professional efficacy, but also on their home lives, their kids, their partners, everything else. So for me personally, leading a large security team, burnout is a massive issue because it impacts them not just at work, but also at home. From a business perspective, the cost of burnout is far, far greater than the cost of prevention. On the way in today, I was actually listening to a fantastic podcast on how to improve your SOC, and they made a fantastic point that if your staff are burnt out, if you're constantly relying on your IR folks to do the same thing day in, day out, when they're burnt out, they're going to make bad decisions. But that's not just bad decisions that could impact them or create some performance management issues, but it could impact the security of the company. So, how do we solve burnout at Canva? Can we all celebrate, found the magic formula? Unfortunately not. But what we have done is we've created a culture where it's okay to talk about it, worked very hard and continue to work hard to create processes to prevent it wherever possible, to deal with it when it occurs in a positive manner, and to drive change when it does happen. We have a very open communication style and system within our organisation to talk about burnout and how our staff are going, and also a strong team culture to report it. Not everyone's going to say, hey, I'm burnt out. Some people will go, you know what, I'm just going to suffer through it, or you may not even realise. And so we've started to build a very strong culture of people calling out, hey, my colleague, my team lead, this other person I'm working with, they're starting to look a bit burnt out. What help can we give them? So why talk about alert fatigue? It's a very common, probably overly used phrase in the industry to talk about selling solutions or things like that. For this talk today, I'll be talking about alert fatigue simply in the context of seeing the same alert day in, day out, and that kind of really grinds you down. It also starts to create a lot of staff retention issues. If you have high alert fatigue or constantly the same alert day in, day out, your staff are going to get pretty bored pretty quick and move on. It also significantly reduces your organisational efficacy. If you have SOC staff sitting there day in, day out responding to the same thing going, yep, false positive, yep, false positive, they're not driving actual change inside of your organisation. So what have we done at Canva? Well, we've started to regularly report on all of our alerts. This is not just within our team, just to myself or to the IR leads, this is all the way up to the CISO. We've also started to foster, as I mentioned, a strong culture of openness and health and well-being. We're incredibly fortunate that it's a strong culture within Canberra itself, but we continue to foster this culture and build upon that within the security and detection group. We've also really focused on automation of alerts. We automate as much of our lives as possible to make our own lives as simple as possible. We have a huge job rotation system, which I'll dive into, and we have a very strong feedback cycle on alerting as a result. And also we regularly review our ways of working. So every 6 months or so, we'll gather the team in Sydney and actually sit down and understand what's working, what's not, what processes do we need to improve, and what do we need to change. The business reporting that we do all the way up to the CISO and up to the executive is how many hours out of hours paging, who's actually on call. So within the organisation, if somebody's on call for more than X percentage, there's actually a red flag raised and highlighted to their manager. We also look at the quantity and scale of incidents. How many incidents are we getting out of hours? What kind of support do we need? What is the effort required there? And this reporting goes all the way up to the CISO and beyond, but it's also heavily discussed within our team to make sure that we have the right resources and we're looking after our staff. It's very easy to get those incident responders who want to be the hero. It's, a lot of IR people want to be seen as the person they can depend upon 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But after a very short period of time, they get burnt out very quick. So we need to make sure that people let go of their Legos and share the load amongst the team. As an incredibly remote team, we also use Slack heavily. So we have an optional data check-in where people can share how they're feeling and what their workload is. It's a very simple red, yellow, green system where people select, yep, feeling green today, energized, caffeinated, let's go. Workload's all good, I'm happy. Or personally, if I've had a rough night, one of my kids is sick, I might say, hey, bit yellow today, bit exhausted. Or hey, I spent the last 36 hours, barely any sleep, major incident, I'm ready. And everyone's incredibly transparent, and over 80% of our team does this every day. And it's been fantastic. So what is this role rotation? So we have a unique organisational structure within detection and response. So I'll look after the group, and we have an incident response team, which has a team lead and 3 pods, which I'll dive into. Then we have a threat detection and hunting team, which has a team lead and some engineers, CTI team, which has a team lead and engineers. And just to clarify, in Canberra, everyone basically is an engineer. Most organisations would call them analysts, so we're all security engineers. And then you'll see the green team has no one, but we'll get to that and why that is. So you might have noticed that the IR team didn't have engineers, it had pods. Well, pods are small teams of engineers where they have a pod lead, which is senior security engineer, and they are their team leader, supervisor, manager, whatever parlance you want to use. We call it a coach in Canada. And so they're the coach that goes with them through all their rotations. They do the day-to-day supervision, ensure all the appropriate work is being delivered, and also take care of the leave, the performance management, all of those things. Then the pod members are our security engineers, who range from seniority from associate, so very early career, all the way through to senior principal staff engineers. Those are the people who do the day-to-day work, the alert triage, and the actual IR forensics. So how do we rotate? So typically on a normal day, which is 99% of our world likely, the first pod will be on IR. Pod B will be doing detection, hunting, and CTI. So one of the people from the pod will go off to do CTI work, and the other 3 people in the pod will go and do detection and hunting. And then pod C is assigned to green team. So whilst we don't have a permanent green team, everyone in the incident response group, team I should say, does this green team work as well. And so green team reports back to IR. So when our folks are on incident response duties, they're doing triaging of alerts. So they receive all the alert notifications, receive all the incident reports from the organisation, from third parties, from customers, and they do the actual forensics, the incident coordination, and everything else that's required. But when they're in detection and hunting rotation, they'll actually manage our senior infrastructure, do detection engineering, perform threat hunts, and get fully engaged with the detection hunting team to do all the work that they normally do. So as a result, our team is very, very well versed in exactly what's happening inside of that space. And similarly, when someone is assigned to the CTI team, they'll triage the CTI alerts on our adversaries, produce intelligence products, and assist with CTI automation and tooling, just like all of the security engineers in the CTI team. Then the favourite rotation for most people is green team. This is a dedicated rotation where they focus on process procedure improvement, automation of all of our alerts, and perform training. And they'll be doing this for a month. So they'll spend 1 month doing incident response, 1 month doing threat detection and hunting, and then 1 month green team. So out of 3 months, they have to triage alerts and respond to incidents for 1 month. Typically within the pod, they'll also assign a person to be the primary, as we call it, who will be doing the initial triage for 1 week. So out of a 3-month period, any one engineer should hopefully only be triaging alerts on a daily basis for 5 days. Then they rotate off and they receive then the confirmed incidents, start doing the IR work. And that way we start to reduce how often they're seeing the alerts and hopefully start reducing alert fatigue. But they also then take that knowledge of the alerts with them. So this has resulted in a huge amount of professional growth. So we have early career engineers who've come in and joined as an IR-focused organisation, and they're now exposed to a deep understanding of CTI. So when they go into the CTI rotation, we build a training program. What is CTI? How do you assess intelligence? And so they go through that. When they go to threat detection, they then understand how does threat detection engineering work? How do we onboard logs? And how do we do it at Canvas scale? As I mentioned earlier, we have a very large scale, and so we definitely have some unique challenges there. It also significantly reduces the alert fatigue, as I mentioned, because they're seeing the alerts for maybe 1 week out of 3 months. And so rather than seeing the same alert day in, day out, they only see it for a little bit, but the alerts that they do see, they then take back to the threat detection team. They go, hey, we should fix that. This also significantly reduces silos within the organisation. I've seen in many very large organisations where your threat detection hunting team does their thing, they find something, they throw it over the fence to IR and say good luck. Same with CTI, it just gets passed over. But because of this constant rotation of staff and resources and capability, everyone is fully cross-trained, everyone understands what is going on in the various areas. But also if CTI produces a report or produces an alert for us, they understand the process and the capability of CTI, what are the limitations, and that significantly reduces friction as well. So the huge results for us are that we have much happier candidates. We've significantly reduced alert fatigue, and we have a highly cross-trained group. And every one of our engineers now has an enhanced understanding and capability of each area and the challenges they face. So when they see an alert that's a false positive, they understand the challenges the threat detection team faces in creating the alerts and provides much better feedback on, hey, we should fix this, because they're the ones that actually created the alert in the first place. It also incentivizes them to create better alerts in the first place because they're going to get paged if they have to respond to it in the middle of the night. But it's not always perfect. We definitely have some challenges and improvements. Not everyone likes every rotation. IR definitely seems to be the least favourite rotation. And the IR muscle, we actually noticed atrophy. IR is a repetitive process, you kind of build up the muscle memory. And so if you're doing it day in, day out, you get quite fast at it, you understand where things are, and it's easy to respond. We notice this atrophies quite quickly, and so typically by the time people get back into the IR rotation, they need some exercises and training. So that is an area we're focusing on. Interestingly enough, we've already made some changes in some of the other rotations. We used to send people to the CTI team for 2 weeks, and then to threat detection and hunting when we split up the pods. But we found that people getting onto CTI, their CTI muscle had kind of atrophied as well. It took them about 2 weeks to get back up to full speed, and then at that time they'd be rotating out of CTI. So the feedback from all of the engineers and the CTI team was the engineers were not providing any value to CTI. They were just kind of getting up to speed slowly and then rotating out. So we've now extended out to that full month, and that's borne a lot of fruit. We're also about to move to a follow the sun model with one pod overseas, so it's going to get interesting rotating these roles within one pod. And passing work across in the green team gets quite challenging. So the green team, because it doesn't have permanent resources, can't have engineers with the kind of knowledge and the background in what's happening, and so we're working to improve that process. Some of the other key things that we found is do alert automation as much as possible. We have a very large automation platform where we try and alert, get the alerts in, automate the triage, the response as much as possible before actually sending them. We also actually, wherever possible, push alerts to our end users. So say, for example, if there's a non-PII containing piece of data that's being shared publicly on Google Drive, it's still kind of against company policy, so we'll actually just notify them on Slack. We'll say, hey user, this is against company policy, did you mean to do this? If the user ignores us, we escalate to their manager. If the user says, yes, I meant to do it, there's a valid reason, fine, we close it out. If the user goes, I have no idea what you're talking about, that's probably a very good signal that the user's account has been compromised and that then pages us. But that is one alert that generates a lot of noise that our team never sees unless the user fails to interact or hits the, I have no clue what you're talking about button. And so we try and page or notify our team about alerts as little as possible. So we've built out this kind of hierarchy of ideal situations where we have a lot of logs that generate some events, that generate slightly less alerts, but then we can automate those as much as possible to either discount them, make them informative, or just feedback into the alerts. So we're doing a lot of ML-based alerting these days to look for unusual patterns, and only then do we present those alerts to our responders. Huge thanks to Paul, our CISO, for allowing us to try this. Definitely when I proposed this to Paul about 18 months ago, he went, heard a lot of people try it, never seen it work, good luck. And he enabled us to do it, and it has worked. Huge thank you to everyone in our detection and response group as well. There's the feedback from our team that has enabled us to keep doing this, and we have an amazing group of people as a result to do this. Questions?
So in the event a user is compromised and we reach out in Slack, it will be the actor who is responding to it. How would you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if the user is compromised, we have other signals other than just Google Drive. Like if we're relying on that signal, that's our very, very last hope. We have other signals. Yeah, absolutely. It could well be an adversary that responds and then says, yes, I meant to do it. But if a user is sharing a lot of Google Drive documents, that would feed back into the other alerting mechanisms that we have to say, hey, this one user has shared everything in their Google Drive. That's probably a strong indication to us of a compromise. So we have different alerts for that.
So do you have different methods of reaching out to the user instead of Slack?
Absolutely, yes. So we have out-of-band communications methods.
What tool are you using for automation? What tools?
Yes, so we use something called Times.io.
Just a question around different experience levels in the teams. How do you manage that when you rotate, say, if you're a principal engineer in IR and then you rotate into the green team or the CPI team, you know, that your principal level, so then how does that get essentially how that carries across in your team?
Yeah, so because the pod is a standalone team, so they have a senior engineer with them, so that senior engineer goes with them. So we spread the experience across all of the pods. So each pod will typically have one senior engineer, one associate engineer, one mid-level, kind of just normal engineer. And so they are meant for IR. Our kind of mantra within the team is we respond to incidents above all else. So whilst, yes, somebody may not be like the most might not be the strongest threat detection engineer, their team, like they are the coach. That's more for performance management, leave, those kinds of things. And the reason they rotate with them as well is because Beth, who's our head of IR, she can't really have a good indication of what's happening when they're doing threat detection and hunting. So when it comes to performance review time, it'd be incredibly hard for her to go, yes, you've done an amazing job in creating all these detections, because that's not her area. but the person who manages their day-to-day work goes with them, and so as a result does that. But that's also, yeah, why we've spread out the experience amongst the heads as well. Yeah. And the, yeah.
Two quick questions. So, has there ever been a case where someone gets pulled out and gets put back into IR because something needing that person's skills has come out? Like,
not for a, we don't typically do that for a particular person. So we have dedicated specialists, say in malware reverse engineering, hard disk forensics, we have a separate dedicated team for that. But absolutely, if the caseload of IR increases, we will just ask for people to come back to IR, absolutely.
is that well processed with thresholds and all that sort of stuff, or is it just ad hoc sort of?
Yeah, just so our team is incredibly flexible, so we'll just jump on Slack and say, hey, IR is getting a little bit overwhelmed, who's available to jump in, and everyone typically volunteers.
You mentioned that the green team do handover support, so would that include, like, we're in the middle of an IR, now it's not to rotate, or do we just keep doing the IR and everyone completely?
Nope, everyone hands over their cases. And this is one of the things that was challenging initially, was to force the case handover at the end of your IR rotation. But we found it works incredibly well. What was happening was exactly that. People would go, yep, we finished our month of IR, but I'm going to hold on to this one case. And then they would lose focus. So they either wouldn't do the threat detection engineering work that we needed to, and the incident was being handled poorly. But also, as we move to a follow the sun model, we need people to hand over cases anyway. So we just felt it was great practice to start doing it within our time zone before we take on the challenge of extra time zones.
The traffic lighting you mentioned before with the people's movement, is that anonymized? Is that, like, how do you have like a Slack channel where everyone just posts a little emoji of their current ping and everyone sees it next to their name, or is that reported to a manager and is anonymized? Like,
Yeah,
how comfortable are people sharing those movements?
Yeah, so that's why it's opt-in, but no, it's not anonymized at all. So it's actually a third-party system that integrates with Slack that we use. So every day it pops up at 8 o'clock Perth time and says, check in everyone, and people just check in. If people feel like checking in, they check in. If they don't, they don't. If people do check in, say for example, yellow 3 times or red 2 or 3 times, then it does actually go to their manager and just says, hey, by the way, in case you haven't seen, this person is red multiple times. And no, it's not anonymized, but that's why it's optional for the team. We don't make it mandatory.
You mentioned one of the challenges was like the ramp up time. So the CTI was an example where it takes 2 weeks and you extended it to 4 weeks to really get up to speed. Does that mean there's also a dedicated CTI team who gave that feedback about people rotating?
Yeah, so we have dedicated CTI specialists and dedicated threat detection and hunting people as well. So those teams have permanent engineers.
Yes.
That's all they do, but we augment them with the IR folks.
So do those people then who don't like rotation, do they go to those permanent teams or?
Career development wise, that is absolutely the plan. So our head of CTI, for example, she was an IR engineer. Her background was in CTI and does and she then moved into heading up CTI. Absolutely. So when we look for new engineers, we first typically open it up internally if people are interested.
Do you think, given that there isn't a dedicated green team pod, but obviously if people are developing new products or writing software, which can be difficult to hand over to other teams, would you expect in the future that you're going to also have a dedicated green team, or is that just too much of a juicy apple? And people love that work, and you don't want to reduce their opportunities to do that work.
Yeah, so we'll have dedicated people like detection and hunting we have today. People still get the opportunity to do it. I do believe we will do it. And when we open that up, I expect most of the engineers will be ripping my arm off to get that wrong.
Okay. So, and then follow-up question, at what point, given that IR seems to be sucky, where does ML, like, how far away are we from getting AI and ML to just do that crappy work?
Yeah, so it's more about automation, and so I think the more we focus on that green team to automate the alert, to automate the triage, like mean time to containment for basic kind of malware. We've driven from an hour to a minute type of thing recently with automations. And so I think our big focus will be on that and really reducing the sucky manual work. And also what we've seen with AI, everyone's playing with it. It's wrong so often that right now probably not going to quite follow its advice and let it do its thing. But absolutely, that will help people follow investigative paths, and that's where we equate it kind of internally as a calculator. It's a fantastic tool, but it's not going to put anyone out of a job at this point. Any other questions? Yes?
Hey, I just have a question. So you were saying, of course, you cycle people off manual rotation as opposed to the end of an incident investigation, I think, in the sense of IR. Do you find that could potentially impact some of the actual trajectory in the completion of? And it seems I don't know, I sort of consider in IR, that's my main thing, the idea of jumping off an investigation, of a multiple investigation. I'd be worried about, breakdowns of communication, log sources not being, things just, things potentially stalling, or there being this number of information that isn't fully sort of clear in this area.
Absolutely, we have concerns over that. But that's why we have very, very strict standards on documentation, what is logged, what is happening, daily updates, all of those kinds of things. Because we're going to have to start handing over anyway to an overseas team, handing over internally within the same time zone where if somebody forgets something, they can still easily ask them, what was a good first step. And I think we've done very well in kind of that process. We have pretty good standards and documentation now. And so for most incidents that run long, a lot of our incidents don't run for that long. Like that I accidentally lost my mobile phone. That is not a long-running kind of incident for us. But the longer-running incidents, far and few between. The documentation and everything else, absolutely, we're pretty comfortable handing those over.
Time for one more. Quick one. Anyone?
Will that model survive a 24/7 world?
That's what we're building up to. Yeah, so we're about to hire, we're actually right now finishing hiring in the UK. And so the idea is that they rotate their staff there, and then I'd see kind of next to the US probably. Absolutely. So
you would have been on a night shift in WA and hand over to the country. So
correct. Yeah, we found night shifts never work. Nobody wants to do it, everyone leaves. So yeah, follow the sun is what we're doing.
Cool, mate. Awesome. Right, thank you very much.